Aloha. We are back in the legislature in special session, and since I didn't know how this worked, I thought some of you might not know either, so I wanted to explain it, what we're doing here. Basically, the governor vetoed 26 of the bills that the legislature sent to him, and 4 of those bills, they had technical problems. They were at odds with federal law, and so the administration and the legislature worked together to amend 3 of those bills. One of them, for example, used ARPA or federal relief funds to pay off our debt service, which is not allowed. That information came out after the bill was passed. And by amending that, basically having all of that debt service come out of our general funds instead, that paved the way for another bill that I think will override today, HB 53, that had to do with issuing bonds. So now we can issue bonds for construction projects, 1.2 billion. Another bill that we fixed with an amendment is HB 1299, and that's a bill that cleaned up numerous special funds and revolving funds that either were obsolete or had built up a lot of reserves that were more than those departments needed or could spend. Unfortunately, 3 of those did have some issues. So there's the Milk Control Fund, the National Mortgage Settlement Trust, and those were removed from that bill. There's SB 589, which attempts to improve coordination between UH Cancer Center and UH Medical School. And it also had in it one provision that extended the ability of the UH president to act as a procurement officer. And it turns out that violates federal contracting law, so that was removed. And then there was another 5 bills that we did override on Tuesday. And to do an override, you have to have 2/3 votes in the House and 2/3 votes in the Senate. So SB 1387, that requires all pets owners to microchip their cats and dogs. And that's something that we heard in my committee in agriculture, and had a lot of very impassioned testimony and a lot of evidence of how many dogs and cats are lost. So we would like to get that one through. SB 811 requires Department of Education to publish weekly reports on their COVID cases. And they may do that anyways, but we'd like to ensure that they do it because that will really allow teachers and parents and families to feel more comfortable that they know what's going on in schools as they send their kids back. SB 404 lowers the threshold for non-candidate committees. That's committees that are doing activities or spending money for an election that are not connected to the candidate themselves. And that's really targeting dark money. Sometimes you see negative ads and you don't know who's doing it, who's behind it. So that lowers the threshold, making them, I think now they have, with just $1,000 of expenditure, they have to report. It also takes away the need for candidate committees. So that's a committee like my committee when I was running. And the reason for that is that we already report everything and people know who we are. And the requirement to do special communications reports really was a disadvantage for first timers that didn't have didn't know that that was a requirement, and they were getting fined. Luckily, I read the instructions. I did not get fined, but a lot of people did. And then SB 263, it switches the management of Hawaiʻi Made program from Department of Agriculture to Department of Business and Economic Development and Tourism. And if you have never heard of Hawaiʻi Made, which I had not, there's a reason for this switch. Department of Agriculture, that is not their strength to do marketing, and that hopefully is the strength of DBED, so that's the reason for the switch. And then the really contentious one is HB 826, and that one ironically has my name as a first primary introducer, but it had been gutted and replaced and added to multiple times, so it is no longer my bill. And that one, the contentious part is that it changes the way HTA is funded. And so HTA will no longer be funded directly out of the transient accommodation taxes, but they will have to come back to the legislature every year and justify their budget just like all the other departments. And their budget was reduced, but I have to say the House put back in a bunch of money for their budget. And I really applaud the new direction that HTA is taking, more of a management role rather than just a marketing role. And I'm hoping that this works, and if they are doing a good job, which I believe they will do when they come back to the legislature for money every year, they will get it. All right, aloha.